And now we are starting part C of the Real Estate Investment Trust Regulations. Here we are going to cover the rights and responsibilities of various parties involved in it, and it is given under Chapter 3 under Regulation 9 to Regulation 13. So first we will be looking at the rights and responsibilities of the trustee, then rights responsibility of manager, sponsor and sponsor group, and then rights responsibility of valuer, and then rights and responsibility of the auditor. Now let's see Regulation 11, which talks about the rights and the responsibility of the sponsor or sponsor group. As you are already aware that sponsor is the main person in this writ regulations who set up the writ. So you can say that sponsor is the person who give birth to the writ, and after forming or setting up of the writ, he appoints the trustee to take care of the writ. So sponsor is one of the very important person under writ regulation, and there is a lot of responsibilities are there for sponsor. So sponsor should also take units, minimum units he will have to hold, because the investor gain the confidence when the sponsor is also holding the units of the writ. So what are the conditions, what are the responsibilities of the sponsor, we are going to see here in regulation number 11. So as per sub-regulation 1 of 11, sponsor or sponsor group shall set up the writ and appoint the trustee of the writ. Sub-regulation 2 says that the sponsor or sponsor group shall transfer or undertake to transfer, subject to a binding agreement and adequate disclosure in the initial offer document, their entire shareholding and interest in the holdco or SPVs, or the entire ownership of the real estate asset to the writ. And this should be transferred before the allotment of the units of the writ to the applicant. So there is always a chance that the sponsor might be holding some shares or other interest they might be having in the holdco or SPVs. So they have to transfer this to the writ before the allotment of unit to the applicant. However, the regulation further says that this clause, subclause, shall not apply to the extent of any mandatory holding of share or interest in the holdco or SPVs by the sponsor, as may be required by the act, regulation, circular, guideline of the government or regulatory authority as specified from time to time. It means if any act or rule or regulation says that the sponsor will have to hold minimum this much of the share or interest in the holdco or SPVs, then they may continue to hold up to that much limit. But whatever is excess to the minimum, they will have to transfer it to the writ. Then comes sub-regulation 3, which talks about the minimum holding of units by the sponsors. So clause A says that sponsor or sponsor group collectively should hold at least 25% of the total unit of the writ after initial offer on post-issue basis. And this 25% of the unit which is held by the sponsor should be held, or you can say locked in, for a period of 3 years from the date of listing of such unit. इसका मतलब ये जो मिनिमम 25% होल्डिंग है टोटल यूनिट्स का 25%, the sponsor should continue to hold it for at least 3 years from the date of listing. They should not dispose it off before 3 years from the date of listing. तो आप क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं सर 25% यहाँ पर मिनिमम होल्ड करना है, लेकिन 35% अगर उन्होंने होल्ड कर रखा है So this 10% we can say it's a excess holding. The excess holding also the sponsor should continue to hold it at least for 1 year from the date of listing. And this excess can be sold by the sponsors after the end of 1 year from the listing. However, जो minimum holding है 25%, they should continue to hold it for at least 3 years from the date of listing, and after that they may dispose it off. Then comes clause B. Clause B says that sponsor or sponsor group together should hold at least 15% of the outstanding unit of the listed writ at all time. इसका मतलब at least 15% of the total units उनको इतना तो हमेशा के लिए होल्ड करके रखना ही पड़ेगा. That is, throughout the life of the writ, they should continue to hold at least 15% of the total outstanding unit of the writ. Further, clause C says that each individual sponsor individually shall hold at least 5% of the total outstanding unit of a listed writ at all times. Now, this is a very important sub-regulation which talks about holding of units by the sponsor. So, just take a recap of this whole provision. It says that the sponsor collectively should hold at least 25% of the units. Further, it says that they should continue to hold it for 3 years, and after 3 years they can dispose it off. Further, it says that any excess holding may be disposed of by the sponsor after a period of 1 year from the listing of units. Then they further says that all the sponsor or sponsor together should hold at least 15% of the total units all the time. That means they cannot dispose of these unit. 15% तो उनको हमेशा hold करके रखना पड़ेगा. And apart from this, each individual sponsor should hold at least 5% of the total unit at all the times. Now, sub-regulation 4 says that if the sponsor or sponsor group propose to sell its unit below the limit specified in clause B and clause C. तो clause B में हमने देखा था 15% minimum all the time और at the beginning at least 25%, और individual जो sponsor है उसको at least 5% hold करना पड़ेगा all the time. So if they want to dispose of these holdings also, so first thing you have to remember that such unit should be sold only after a period of 3 years from the date of listing of units. Second clause says that prior to sale of such unit, the sponsor and the sponsor group shall arrange for another person or entities to act as a redesignated sponsor. For example, there are 3 sponsors, A, B and C, and suppose A, who was holding 5% of the total units of the writ, want to sell this units to another person. Let's say you want to sell to D. So D may be a person or entity. Now in such case, the D, that is the another person who is purchasing these unit, will have to act as a redesignated sponsor, and then it should also satisfy the eligibility norms for the sponsor which are specified under regulation 3. However, this regulation further says that instead of selling these units to another person, A can sell its units to another sponsor as well. That is, it can sell its unit to existing sponsor as well. So in this case, there will be no need of redesignated sponsor. But if A choose to sell its unit to another person, that another person will have to act as a redesignated sponsor, And not only this, as per clause C, the proposed redesignated sponsor shall obtain the approval from the unit holder, or it should provide an option to exit to the unit holder. यानी unit holder को या तो exit option देना पड़ेगा या फिर उसका अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा unit holder का to act as a redesignated sponsor. It further says that this clause का मतलब ये जो clause C है, it shall not apply where the units are proposed to be sold to the existing sponsor और member of sponsor group. यानी हमने जो देखा था, A जो sponsor है अगर वो B को सेल कर रहा है, existing sponsor को अपनी यूनिट सेल कर रहा है, तो ऐसे केस में यूनिट होल्डर्स का अप्रूवल लेने की जरूरत नहीं है, उनको एग्जिट ऑप्शन देने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. Then sub-regulation 5 says that if the redesignated sponsor propose to sell its unit to another person, अब ये जो redesignated sponsor है D, if he further wants to sell its units to another person, let's say E, then in such case clause B and clause C of this regulation 4 should be complied with. It means E को उस केस में एक्ट करना पड़ेगा as a redesignated sponsor, and it should also provide option to the unit holder to exit or should get the approval from the unit holder.